Abby, very good to see you. We have an age-old question. Should you pay off your mortgage early or invest? Let's say someone has a pile of cash sitting in the bank right now. Perhaps they're invested in a money market earning about 5%, which is very likely right now. Let's
Mhm.
talk through whether those safe returns have changed the conventional wisdom when it comes to paying off your mortgage. So before you pay off your mortgage, you say first you need to consider whether you need the liquidity.
Yeah, so what we don't want people to do is get caught up in paying off the mortgage and then get in a bind where they don't have enough liquidity and then they have to go and borrow at a higher rate.
Right.
So that's going to be kind of shooting yourself in the foot a little bit. So you really need to take a look at, do I have the proper emergency fund in place? What we recommend is a high yield savings account, of course, for that emergency fund. But do you have anywhere from, depending on your circumstance, 3 to 6 months of expenses in a high yield savings account? If
Mhm.
so, then it might be the next step might be to look at paying off some debt. And a part of that equation is definitely your mortgage.
hmm So next you say you need to determine how those returns compare. So the ROI of a mortgage pay down versus investing in the market. And the
Mhm.
return on your debt pay down is pretty straightforward. That's going to be whatever your mortgage rate is, according to the interest rates. And we're going to take a quick look at the 30-year fixed rate here, Abby. We've seen that it can range quite a bit.
Right. So if you have, say, a lump sum for whatever reason in a safe account, so like a cash or a cash equivalent, so that's a bank account, savings account, high yield savings account, you're going to want to look at the interest that you're earning on that and compare it to your mortgage rate. And this is going to be very different for different people depending on when they got that mortgage. So
Yeah.
you can see this chart here. It's kind of it looks like a ski slope a little bit with a little bit of a jump at the end, and that's what we've experienced recently. So mortgage rates were really at historic lows for a really long time after the financial crisis, and that's what many people have locked in right now, except for those unfortunate people that have to move or need to relocate or something like that. They have much higher rates. So you're going from maybe a 2 to 3% mortgage rate to maybe even 6 to 7%. The answer is going to be very different for those people. So based on where your money is right now or where your money could be going, are you going to get a better bang for your buck by paying off your mortgage? Or are you going to get better bang for your buck by either leaving it in a high yield savings account, maybe at 5%,
Mm.
or even investing in the market where if your time horizon is long enough, so if you're younger, not right on the cusp of retirement, you can expect to get, depending on what you're invested in, maybe 7 to 10% annualized over a long period of time. So if your mortgage rate is 2.5, 2.8%, then you've got a lot of other options right now, some of them completely risk-free as far as principal risk. And so you have more options on the table than you used to, because it used to be I could get what 0.01% on
Yep.
on my safe money. So it was a no-brainer to go ahead and pay off the mortgage.
Mhm.
And you get the peace of mind too that comes from that. So now the equation is different, and it's a good time to take a look at that and just pause before you throw a big chunk of your wealth into your house, because
Mhm.
if you need that back, then sure, you could maybe get a home equity loan or take out a loan, but rates are a lot higher now. So just
Yeah, they're
pause and
deluxe. Yeah.
take all of that into account before you make that decision.
Mhm. And so you mentioned this just a second ago. You need to factor in your life stage. In other words, your time horizon, because that's
Mm,
going to affect what your returns would be
yes.
theoretically if you were invested in the market.
Yeah, absolutely. So time horizon is one of the most important principles in financial planning, and doesn't get talked about a lot, but it should. So if you are closer to retirement, then it makes more and more sense to go ahead and pay off that mortgage potentially. So as we get closer to retirement, what people should be doing, often they don't, unfortunately, but you should be getting more and more conservative. So taking some of those chips off the table, and in doing so, your expected rate of return is also going to go down, which is okay. That's part of getting close to retirement needing your money. But if you're younger and you have a longer time horizon, then your expected rate of return, if you're investing more aggressively, is going to be a little bit higher. So those two things are going to come into account when you're thinking about paying off your mortgage. And then what I found a lot of times is that people not only aren't investing as aggressively when they get close to retirement, hopefully, but they also just really don't want that monthly expense. So when you go on a fixed income, no matter how high it is, you're still taking a look at those expenses. And if you can get that kind of off the books, so to speak, that can be helpful for cash flow. And so it makes a little bit more sense to maybe look at that and go ahead and pay down the mortgage. And hopefully at that point in time, it's not nearly as high as it was when we were younger. So that's where the life stages definitely come into play.
Right. And next, you have to consider the tax implications.
Yes. So this is a tricky one because conventional wisdom was always, well, I don't want to pay my mortgage down necessarily because I get a tax deduction. And right now, because the standard deduction has doubled, thanks to the tax laws that were passed almost 8 years ago now, that's not necessarily the case anymore. So most people don't itemize, which is great because itemizing is terrible to actually have to do. But if you're not itemizing, then you're not deducting that mortgage interest. So it's not really that much of a tax benefit, if at all, for most people. But that is set to change in 2026 when those tax laws sunset or go back to what they used to be. So the rules are always changing, which is why we always remind people to don't take rules, rule of thumbs and apply it to your situation, because what was advised a couple years ago might be completely different now. So that's something to take into account.
And then last, you have touched on this as well. You want to ask yourself if paying off your mortgage will bring peace of mind. There's a lot of people who want to go into retirement debt-free.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that is what I've seen from the couples that I work with, the people that I work with, is when they are debt free, there's a freedom with that because they see that paycheck coming in, hopefully from Social Security, annuities, maybe pensions if they're lucky, and they can kind of control a little bit of the outflow. And when they don't have that debt, they have more freedom to go and travel or help their grandkids or help their kids. And that's huge. So I would definitely support that decision, because even though it's maybe not, you might be earning more interest even in a high yield savings account than your mortgage is. So it might make financial sense to go ahead and pay that off, or it might not make financial sense to pay that off. But it's not always the best decision just because it makes sense. The math makes sense. Sometimes you have to take into account, what's best for you. Will that make you sleep better at night? Because that's the most important thing, really. And so being able to pay that off and get that cash flow down and be able to sleep better at night is important, very important.
Right. But, after crunching the numbers and seeing it in front of you, it might change how you feel about carrying that debt, which is why speaking with somebody about this to, again, talk through all those variables and how it may change 2 years from now, 5 years from now. Abby, if somebody wants to crunch those numbers with you, how can they reach you?
So you can always give us a call at 678-442-0255. And we recommend also visiting our website, theretirementfamily.com. So there's videos like this, as well as a bunch of other topics. And then once you take a look at that, you can reach out, send us a message, and let us know kind of what's on your mind, and schedule just a quick 15-minute introductory call with one of our fiduciary advisors.
Great. Abby, thank you.
Thanks, Erin.